Welcome to another chapter of Chords That Vibe. Walk with me. Have you ever made a track where some part goes on for way too long, but you're unsure of how to focus the idea? Me too. Here's one of those times where I improvised a piano part that had a nice texture, but meandered for way too long. By identifying the essential element of this piano part, I was able to turn it into this. But what is the essential element? This can start to sound like vague guru talk. It's the shortest, most identifiable piece of your music. It's the main character of your track. In the original improvised piano part, it was this moment right here. Let's hear that again and listen for the melodic decoration. There's an infinite amount of ways that a segment of music can distinguish itself as the essential element, but the most tangible way to think of this is it's the part that you hit play to hear. A more abstract way to think of this is like looking at the night sky. If we think of this whole part as the night sky, we are looking for that brightest, most prominent constellation, like Orion's belt. There is a composer who was an absolute master of this. In his day, they would have called it the motif or theme. Here's 8 notes from one of his biggest hits. Who is the composer? What is the piece? And what is the type of composition? If anyone can answer this, it kind of proves the power of the essential element. Focusing your tracks in this way can stamp your fingerprints so clearly on your music that it may be instantly recognizable as you, even hundreds of years later. In order to get more specific about what makes this the essential element, we're going to need to talk about the chords. We are in the key of F natural minor. So we'll start on F, then G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, and now back to F. What is another name for the natural minor scale? The chord progression starts on the 4 chord, which means the chord built on the 4th note of the scale, which is B flat. Then the chord progression moves to the 1 chord, the chord built on the 1st note of the scale, which is F. Both of these chords are minor 11th chords. Here's B flat minor 11, and now F minor 11. To build these chords, we start on the 1st note of the chord, which for the 4 chord is B flat. Then we skip a note until you reach the 11th note in the staircase. But you might be thinking, there's only 7 notes in the scale, and you're absolutely right. But when we're building chords, we think of the scale in 2 octaves, which makes it a bit simpler to keep track of these vertical stacks. So B flat would be 1, we skip C and D flat would be 3, skip E flat and F is 5, skip G and A flat is 7, skip B flat and C is 9, skip D flat and E flat is 11. Now we'll do the same thing starting on the 1 chord, F. To make these chords a little bit more musically pleasing, I'm going to adjust the placement of some of these notes. Different arrangements of the notes of a chord are called chord voicings. I am going to make it so my chord voicings are centered around middle C. So for the B flat minor 11th chord, I'm going to take the 11th, E flat, and move it down an octave. I'm also going to take the 9th, C, and move it down an octave. Finally, I'll take the root and move that down an octave. The the bass is going to play that note. So now here's our B flat minor 11th voicing. Nice and compact right there in the middle of the keyboard. Now for our F minor 11 voicing, we're just going to take the top note, the 11th, B flat, and move that down an octave. We'll move the root down an octave as well, where the bass will play it. Now if we go between our 4 chord and 1 chord, you can hear how they're both nice and compact right here around middle C, and they also move really smoothly between one another. Now we're going to do one more thing. We're going to take that B flat minor 11 chord, and we're going to move the bottom note, which is this C, the 9th, and we'll move it up an octave. Now we have a variation of the voicing, which to the listener sounds like a new chord, but to us, the composer, producer, musician, we know it's actually just the same chord but repackaged. Now I can move between those two chords, those two inversions. I'm going to do the same thing for the next chord, the 1 chord, F minor 11. I'm going to take the 9th, the G, which is the top note, and move it down an octave. Now I've got 2 inversions of this chord, 2 different variations. With these 2 variations of each chord, I now have the ability to create a kind of riff, or kind of a very subtle melody as I move these around. This is what formed the main harmonic material for my tune. Here's how it sounds with some drums. Now let's go back to that essential melodic element. In order to really understand the motivation behind your instincts when you were jamming, improvising, or just putting the idea down, we need to analyze this in 2 dimensions: the harmonic dimension and the melodic dimension. We'll start with the melodic dimension, and we'll look at how this melody moves horizontally across the notes of the F minor scale. It starts on B flat, which plays twice and solidly defines this as the beginning point of the melody. B flat is the 4th note of the F minor scale. It then moves up to the note above, consecutive in the scale, to C, which is the 5th, then moves right back down to B flat, where it then moves again to a consecutive note in the scale underneath, A flat, the 3rd, and then comes right back up to B flat. Then it moves to a non-consecutive tone in the scale. It moves 2 tones away to G, which is the 2nd note of the scale. This is a common technique in melody writing. It's called upper and lower neighbors. C is an upper neighbor to B flat, and A flat is a lower neighbor to B flat. In this way, you can think of the melody as B flat lasting all the way till G, with C and A flat just being melodic decorations or ornamentations of B flat. In this sense, a simplified version of this melody is simply B flat to G. B flat to G. Can you name the type of ornamentation that uses upper and lower neighbors, both diatonically and chromatically, that came into use in jazz music? There are many things that can make a piece of music interesting, but to me, something really holds up to repeat listens when it has this underlying musical physics at work. Now let's see how this melody works vertically, in the harmonic dimension. There's something interesting going on here. The melody overlaps the chord change. The first part of the melody, B flat, C, B flat, A flat, all happens over the B flat minor 11 chord. And then when the chord changes to F minor 11, we get the rest of the melody, B flat, G. Here's how it sounds. This is called playing over the bar line, very literal term. Here's the first part of the melody over B flat minor 11. Now here's the bar line where the chord changes, and we get the rest of the melody. If this is new to you, you might be realizing that your melodies end in the same bar that they begin in. This is a common cause for melodies sounding simple or predictable. When you play over the bar line, the listener is far less able to predict the direction or ending point of the melody, and this creates a far more interesting and exciting listening experience. If we look at what each of those melody notes means in the context of the chord that's sounding at the time, we'll observe that the first four notes, B flat, C, back to B flat, and then A flat, over the B flat minor 11 chord, are B flat the 1, C the 9th, back to B flat the 1, and then down to A flat the 7th. But when we move back up to B flat for the rest of the melody, the chord is changed to F minor. And now that B flat is no longer the 1, it's the 11th. And then that melody resolves to G, which is the 9th of F minor 11. So that same tone has been recontextualized based on the underlying harmony from 1 to 11. And it has a whole new harmonic color. We didn't do all this thinking and analyzing just to play the melody once and call it a day. If I were going to do that, I would have just left the song as it was in its original improvised version. The value of discovering the essential element is to be able to repeat it, which will make the track feel like an intentional song rather than a jam or improvisation. A good place to start is repeating your melody every 2, 4, or 8 bars. This will depend on your melody, the tempo, and the style. The way you repeat your essential element will determine the pacing of your song. I'm working at 120 beats per minute, so I'm going to repeat mine every 4 bars. This leaves enough space to prevent it from being crowded and overwhelming, but keeps it connected enough to make it feel like part of one musical phrase or sentence. The longer the space in between the repetitions, the more that break will start to feel more like a period rather than a comma. Thinking of your melodic elements in terms of sentences, phrases, paragraphs, punctuation, and slang is a great way to keep your music connected to its roots, communication. When repeating this melody 4 bars later, something interesting happens. The chords shift again, but this time in the opposite direction, from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. This means that those notes will have a different relationship to the chords, in the vertical harmonic dimension. Now, since the chord is F minor 11, that first melodic piece will be B flat, which is the 11th, C, which is the 5th, back to B flat, the 11th, and then A flat, the minor 3rd. And now the chord changes to B flat minor 11, the 4 chord, where now that melody goes to B flat, which is now 1, and then to G, which is now the 6th of B flat minor. There's nothing technically wrong with this, but it's a bit too zesty for me, specifically that G over B flat. So how can we get some different melodic options while maintaining that essential element? Well, we can take our most simplified version of this, which was the B flat with an upper and lower neighbor, and then B flat G. And we can pack that whole idea up and just move 1 tone up in the scale. So now instead of B flat, upper and lower neighbor to G, we'll move up to C with an upper and lower neighbor to A flat. Same idea, just everything shifted 1 note up in the scale. The portability of the upper and lower neighbor concept is super useful. No matter where we move our note, the upper neighbor will always mean 1 note above in the scale, and the lower neighbor will always mean 1 note below in the scale. Let's give that a listen. F minor, B flat minor.
I like that much better, and of course that's just my taste. But maybe there's something to learn about why it sounded better to me by looking at how this relocation changed the relationship between the melody and the chords.
Now, over F minor 11, the C is the 5th, and then D flat is the 13th and is pretty dissonant, too dissonant. But given how short it lasts in the melody, it's fine. Then moves back down to the 5th, C, then down to B flat, the 11th, and now the chord changes to B flat minor 11. And now that C becomes the 9th. It was the 5th over F minor, and now it's the 9th over B flat minor, where it then falls down to A flat, which is the 7th of B flat. Now I can see that originally the melody landed over the B flat minor 11 chord on B flat to G. I found that G to be too dissonant. Now that we've taken that melody and relocated it up one tone, now it's C, A flat, the 9th and the 7th, and now fits within the color palette we were already using of 7ths, 9ths, and 11ths, no 13ths. This method of packing up the melody and keeping the same relationships but moving it to a different position in the scale has a name. I'll give you a hint. It has the letters SEQ.
This also improves the musical phrase or sentence. Now, with two different positions of the essential element, there's a clear question and answer, or call and response, or tension and release between the first and second part. This creates contrast, and now doesn't even sound like a repeated 4-bar melody, but instead a single 8-bar melody.
I then recorded drums using this drum kit, and bass. Would you be interested in a sample pack of these drums?
The melody being so carefully constructed allows for the drums and bass to be more relaxed and just find the most interesting way to support the essential element. I was trying to create a Ryuichi Sakamoto, Bill Evans type of sound if they made jazz house.
There's a solo section in the middle that ties the song together. If it were just the essential element over and over for 4 minutes, it would get really boring. Once I had developed the melodic phrase and had everything defined, I then improvised a more traditional piano solo. This is where I was hoping to inject some of the Bill Evans flavor. This is where the whole process came full circle. The idea started as a true 100% spontaneous improvisation, which resulted in an interesting but unfocused result. Then I boiled that improvisation down to its essential element. That essential element was then developed into an intentional composition. I then improvised again, but this time within the framework of that composition, using the essential element as the theme or motif for the improvised solo. This is the paradoxical, almost mystical connection between improvisation and composition, or chaos and order.
Everything we've done with this melody has come from extracting as much as possible out of that initial idea, that essential element. If you're finding it difficult to identify the essential elements in your own music, don't be discouraged. It takes some practice and rewiring of your musical brain. A good way to develop a sense for identifying these essential elements is to listen to your music as a listener, someone who doesn't know any of the details of music, someone who doesn't know what bars, beats, notes, or chords are. This can take time, but remember, you were once this listener. Before you started this music journey, you were most likely someone who just enjoyed listening to music. Try to reconnect with this part of yourself and listen to your music from this point of view. This will make it easier to avoid being distracted by the details and allow you to more clearly hear what the most exciting part of your music is, the essential element.
If you'd like to take lessons, I offer one-on-one sessions over Zoom. Email me at jaronlessons@gmail.com for info and scheduling. I'm excited to be launching jaronlopez.com, where I'll be offering resources like ebooks, MIDI packs, sample packs, and more. If you head over there now, you can purchase the ebook format of the concepts presented in this video. The ebook comes with MIDI files, so you can load those into your DAW of choice and create your own take on this chord progression. I'm also launching a new tier on Patreon, where you'll be able to submit tracks for feedback, ask music theory questions, production questions, and more. Head over to Patreon for more info. And if you'd like to listen to this song in full, you'll find the links below, as well as the link to my Instagram, which is a great way to stay in the loop of my music releases. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.